Hey guys, here we are at part 3 of our water and soil propagation project. Today we're going to be separating the plantlets from the mother leaves. After all of those plantlets are in their own tiny little pots, we will summarize everything that we learned throughout this process. Let's get started. So we are going to mix up some soil today. I use half African Violet soil and half perlite. I like to rinse off the perlite to help remove the excess dust. It also provides a bit of moisture to the soil. I found that my water straight from the tap for this is in a small enough amount to not harm the plants. All water they will receive from this point on will be bottled spring water. After giving it a mix, we are ready to begin. We have our first plant here. We have 3 to 5 leaves at least that are all a quarter size, so it is okay to go ahead and be separating it. We're going to give a bit of a squeeze around the cup and gently pull it out. Then we're going to start working away all this excess soil. Let's start pulling away the mother leaf. And as we're doing this, just naturally as you're working it with your fingers, you'll see it will start to separate naturally on its own. It's, in this particular situation, of 3 compartments. It may be more than that, but I usually just go with what it naturally wants to do and gently pull apart the roots that are all entangled. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the mother leaf. She kept a lot of her roots, which is great. We're going to repot that and see if she'll create some more babies in the future. Go ahead and get some fresh soil since she's been in that pot for a while. Make some space. I have a pretty long stem on this one. I think I did that just because I may have been putting that in water originally. It was just easier to keep it standing up. I'm going to date it and put it over in the water bath just to hydrate it a bit more. I'm going to label our new pot for our first baby. I usually put a little bit of soil in the bottom to start with and work some of the rest of this excess soil off. Made a little hole with my finger to get the roots a little bit further down into the cup, and then I'm just going to place some soil on top around to hopefully help give it some stability. Continue to work that soil around the top. You don't want to push anything down too far. You don't want the soil to be compacted. You want it to be light and fluffy. So I'm just gently smoothing out that top layer, and then I'm going to use some toothpicks to stabilize the plant. You want to make sure that all of the stems that are coming out of the base of your plant are above the soil line, and you usually want the soil to be pretty high in the pot so that it's not having to reach up to get out of the pot. And move on to our next plant. You want to try to remove as much of the soil as you can so you can have fresh mix. And I'm going to take a look at this closely and see how many more we have here. That's just a sucker. We want to pull that off. It's not going to benefit anything. There were a few suckers on here. But as you can see, again, it just naturally decides where it's going to be. And you can see how that long base that goes down in. Another long base with a lot of leaves coming from a central point. Going to go ahead and pot this one up as well. Put a little soil in the bottom. Try to hold your plant, which is kind of difficult sometimes, I'm not going to lie. Maybe you're not as clumsy as me. Going to go ahead and add soil around the plant and try not to damage the plant while I'm doing so. Again, you want to leave the leaves, the stems from being covered by soil. I'm going to put some more toothpicks in here to stabilize it so it'll stand more upright. Usually leave those in for basically until they start letting their roots kind of hold them in place. The roots will start to grow and they'll naturally get more sturdy over time, and then I'll remove those toothpicks. We're going to move on. I have a little mini here that sometimes it's like they just make one perfect plant. It's kind of the case in this situation, I felt. Give it a little squeeze around the outside of the cup. It's got a lot of nice roots. I'm going to go ahead and pull off any tiny suckers that may be underneath there, as well as starting to work that soil away. I'm going to separate the mother leaf. Oop, it looks like in this case we actually lost all of the roots, which normally I'm pretty good about keeping those, but not today. Looks like I lost a little leaf there. That's okay. Looks like it's all from one central point. There may be some leaves here that are sucker leaves that as I'm potting I will just naturally find and remove. New growth always comes from the center of the plant. If you have a very small leaf growing underneath a larger leaf, then typically it is a sucker, and it's okay to just go ahead and pull that off. As before, we're going to add a little bit of soil in the bottom, allow the roots to dangle down in there, and continue to add soil around and use toothpicks for stability. Keep moving my plants around in and out of the water bath. Now we're going to take that leaf and we're going to cut a fresh 45-degree angle since we lost our roots. And we're going to go ahead and pot it back up in that same cup but with fresh soil so that it can potentially produce some more offspring. Just slide the leaf right down into the soil. Next we will put it in the water bath to get it hydrated. Okay, so let's talk about some of the outcomes from this project. I will say that when I originally started this, I was completely expecting to favor the water process over the soil. There's something really satisfying about being able to see the roots as they're growing and they're popping out. You kind of know where they're at, how far along they are, whereas when you look at the soil, it's just soil. But ultimately, when I really compared the two, the soil had a few positives over the water. One being it's less steps. Normally with the water you're going to go in once a week, freshen up the water. Sometimes people do it even more than that. And as you're going through, eventually you're going to have to pot it up into the soil later on. So it's another step. Whereas the soil, you just put the leaf in the soil and put it in a dome, make sure that it's got the right amount of moisture. You check on it occasionally, and since it's in a dome, it's not going to evaporate the water as quickly, so you don't have to water it as often. So from that aspect, I would say I kind of enjoyed the soil process more. Do you remember that one leaf that was behind all the rest that I had left in the window and had a little brown on the tip? Well, you know, I freshened up the water, I put it back in, I made sure it wasn't in the sun, and I waited another, I don't know, 4 weeks, maybe more, and still no roots started to form. So eventually I ended up just opting to go ahead and put it directly into the soil, and it actually started faster, I believe, over time. Within like 3 to 4 weeks, I started seeing little leaves poking out of the soil. So maybe in that particular variety, the soil process just happened to work better for that particular leaf. It certainly, again, gave another point to the soil propagation side. As far as was one faster than the other, I would say that I noticed the first leaves popping out of the soil faster on the soil propagations than the water propagations. So from that, again, it gets a little bit of an edge over the water propagation. There are other things that can affect how quickly leaves will produce offspring. In some cases, certain varieties take longer to produce or shorter depending on the variety. That's why initially in this project I had 2 leaves of the exact same variety, one in water and one in soil, specifically so that it could be compared. Also, another thing that can affect how fast it produces is the age of the leaf. Technically, we don't know the actual age of the leaf. We ordered these online, but we would assume that an online store would take the leaf from the correct place on the plant for optimum propagation, or at least we hope so. In the end, both water and soil propagations work. I was able to get at least 1 plantlet from each mother leaf, and in some cases up to 3. What it really comes down to is what version you prefer to do overall. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.